In this video, we will explore how communication can support and enhance androcentric language. As Dr. Lips said, communication with others is a major way that cultural expectations are transmitted, acted out, and reinforced. Thus, communication both creates and sustains gender. What is the author saying about the way in which language and communication supports social constructs of gender, women, and girls? What is the 7-38-55% rule? In 1971, Albert Mehrabian published a book, Silent Messages, in which he discusses his research on nonverbal communication. He concluded that prospects based their assessments of credibility on factors other than the words the salesperson spoke. The prospects studied assigned 55% of their weight to the speaker's body language, another 38% on the tone and music of their voices. They assigned only 7% of the credibility assessment to the salesperson's actual words. Over the years, this limited experiment evolved into a generalized belief, and movement and voice coaches would be more valuable to teach successful communication than speechwriters. In fact, there were many books published on it, and while it may be questionable as to how influential we may be, the percentages of communication still exist. Tone of voice is one of the most influential elements of communication. There are factors in the sound of your voice that give meaning, both conscious and unconscious, to the messages you're sending. Some of these factors are timbre, volume, speed, clarity, projection, and there's more. Let me share an example. That's fine. That's fine. That's fine. That is fine. In general, men's voices are deeper. Lower pitched voices give the impression of being louder because they have more resonance. With women's voices being higher pitched, they don't carry as far, says Amy Shaw, Associate Professor and Director of the Cross-Cultural Speech, Language, and Acoustics Lab in the Stockton University School of Health Sciences. Not only can these characteristics make women's voices harder to hear, says Shaw, but when women try to emphasize a point, they sometimes raise their pitch even more, which can sound harsh and jarring. In this vein, a 2012 study published by PLOS ONE found that both men and women preferred male and female leaders who have lower pitched voices across a variety of fields. But simply trying to lower the pitch of a woman's voice can be counterproductive and even potentially harmful to her health. There are many forms of nonverbal communication, as you can see. And culture, gender, and power dynamics are all important factors. We'll review just a few. Start with facial expressions. Researcher Paul Ekman has found support for the universality of a variety of facial expressions tied to particular emotions, including joy, anger, fear, surprise, and sadness. Research suggests that we make judgments about people's intelligence based upon their faces and expressions. People with smiling, joyful expressions were judged as being more intelligent than those with angry expressions. Eyes and gaze. A person looking directly into your eyes indicates that they are interested and attentive. Prolonged eye contact, however, can feel threatening. Breaking eye contact and looking away is distracted, uncomfortable, or conceals his or her real feelings. And then the mouth. Pursed lips might be an indicator of distaste, disapproval, or distrust. I always think of the famous scene in The Devil Wears Prada. Covering the mouth shows a hiding of emotional reaction. Most people do it to avoid displaying either smiles or smirks. A mouth turned up and down can indicate subtle indicators of the way a person is feeling. Gestures can be some of the most direct and obvious body language signals. Some gestures may be cultural, however, so a clenched fist can indicate anger in some situations or solidarity in another. Let's look at the arms and legs. Crossed arms might indicate that a person feels defensive, self-protective, or closed off. Standing with your hands on your hips means a person is ready and in control, or it can represent aggressiveness. Rapidly tapping your fingers or fidgeting can be a sign that a person is bored, impatient, or frustrated. Posture becomes important. Sitting up straight and or leaning forward is someone focused and paying attention. Sitting with the body hunched forward usually means they're bored or indifferent. An open posture indicates friendliness, openness, and willingness, while a closed posture can be an indicator of hostility, unfriendliness, and anxiety. There's the power of touch. People in power tend to touch others much more than those who are not in power. They also touch down on subordinates, as you can see from the picture. And finally, there's personal space. There's been a lot of talk and images of personal space in the last couple of years, including the term called manspreading. I'm sure you've heard of it. Verbal communication styles. Listening and conversational maintenance is a female characteristic in action. Conversational dominance, on the other hand, with filled pauses and intrusive interruptions, is a male-dominated area. Women are interrupted significantly more often than men, according to more than 4 decades worth of research. In 1975, University of California sociologists Don Zimmerman and Candace West recorded 31 conversations in public places like coffee shops and drugstores. In the male-to-female conversations, the researchers noted 48 total interruptions. Men perpetrated all but 2. A more recent study published in the Journal of Language and Social Psychology engaged 40 participants, 20 males and 20 females, in 3-minute conversations. During the discourse, women interrupted men just once on average, yet men interrupted women 2.6 times. Of course, interruptions during conversations may be due to factors other than gender, says study author Dr. Hancock, an associate professor in the Department of Speech, Language, and Hearing Sciences at George Washington University. For example, female-to-female interruptions simply imply a sense of familiarity. Women get to that informal level of conversation more quickly than men do, she says. Yet the multitude of male-to-female interruptions implies a sense of dominance, particularly since men have traditionally held the balance of power throughout modern history, says Tonya Jacoby, a professor of law at Northwestern School of Law. Even when women reach the pinnacle of their profession, such as earning a seat on the U.S. Supreme Court, they remain vulnerable to interruptions. I laugh because it's amazing. When Jacoby and her colleagues did a study analyzing Supreme Court oral arguments, they discovered that female justices were interrupted 3 times more often than their male counterparts, regardless of their seniority. The female justices were also interrupted by lawyers, their juniors, more often than men were. Jacoby says, "I think it's part of a whole phenomenon where women's voices are subordinate to men's." While language has been used as a way of resistance for women, consider nushu, which is a Japanese word for humor and humorous communications of women, most language has been a way of making the masculine the norm. Language as a way to make us think about masculinity and to stereotype, categorize, and belittle women. What we've learned is that there are numerous gendered communication patterns to maintain the status quo. They show us the differences in social patterns, in social power, our childhood socializations. They reinforce the current cultural norms. They address the physical size differences, and many more. To punctuate and clarify communication further, follow up by watching the additional videos for this chapter.